In 2007, as the city was contemplating building additional hangars, we engaged Airport Business Solutions to come in and kind of help us make sure we were on the right track as we looked to build lease hangars. And I agree there's lots of ways to lease hangars. But the preferred, the consultant statement was he prefers reversionary clauses because it protects the airport sponsor and puts the facility in a better situation with the FAA for future funding and expansion. And the ABS also published a newsletter on leases and said, in conclusion, reversionary clauses are the norm in the aviation industry for a number of reasons. These include maximizing future revenue streams, maintaining a level of control over the development and maintenance of facilities on the airport, and the ultimate control and management over airport development as it may impact future airport expansion. So there's really, I think, two reasons as to why reversionary leases are the most prevalent. Over time, they should yield more revenues to the city to help the airports be more self-sustaining. And secondly, it puts the city in a position where if the airport development demands that certain structures be removed, if the hangar, if the city owns that hangar, it doesn't have the expense of trying to buy out a lease from an existing tenant on the field. Whether you have a reversionary and non-reversionary lease, they both have terms, and at some point in time, the airport hangar will go away and will revert back to the city. So there's no guarantee that you'll have a hangar in perpetuity at the field. And I think that's one of the problems we have with the non-reversionary leases. We're 12, 13 years into most of those of a 25-year lease. And as people look to sell those, they really don't know what they can expect from the city after 25 years. I think the hope and assumption is that the hangar won't be needed for other purposes and that somehow they'll be able to negotiate other leases that allow them to continue to own the hangar for a long period of time. But there's no guarantee there. And I think that's pretty clear in the lease. And so, based on ABS's recommendation, I feel like that's why the city chose to go back to reversionary leases. And I understand we had an evolving market. What was market back in 1989 when the first 10 hangars on Hangar Road were constructed versus what's market rate in 2014 is totally different. We've been progressively, the value of the real estate out there has progressively increased over time. And we've shown that the airport can sustain reversionary 30-year leases with the sale of the last 8 hangars. Will it sell at the same rate as non-reversionary leases? Well, it all depends on what the rate is for the non-reversionary leases. I think it's pretty clear that it ought to be higher than the typical reversionary leases we've been offered if it's to become equitable to the city under either scenario. And there's been no discussion as to what that lease rate is, and there's been no real financial analysis. There's been a lot of discussion, but no real analysis of facts, to where I think the airport board has not really studied it enough facts to draw the conclusions that support the non-reversionary leases. And that's why I feel strongly that there ought to be more study done before the recommendations accepted. As we look at the ACRP guidelines for airport development, they suggest that best practices for leasing and developing airport property include reversion of improvements back to the airport sponsor at the termination of lease. Therefore, the lease must be long enough for the developer to be able to amortize the investment the company makes in improvements, but not so long as to unnecessarily restrict the options available to the sponsor to develop and improve the airport in the future. The savvy airport sponsor will be prepared to balance these sometimes competing goals so as to attract development without impeding future options, all while securing market rate fees that will support the operational costs of the airport in a sustainable fashion. I think one of the questions we need to step back and ask ourselves is, what is our goal with the airport? Are we anxious to have a lot more hangars built out there and make the term so attractive that we add another 40 hectares in the next 3 years? Or do we want to have growth at a slower rate? I suspect there's lots of different opinions on what's in the best interest of the city. I could debate either side as to what the city's goal ought to be. I think the bottom line is there's certainly no recommendation coming from the airport board as to what the lease rates ought to be to support a non-reversionary lease, as opposed to what we have been doing with the most recent hangars that have been reversionary.
Any questions, Council, Commissioner Anderson? Okay, what I'd like to do for, just to turn it out to the audience, those who'd like to stand up and take a few minutes, we can address the council with any concerns.
Can I one thing? What's funny is when this document was going to come over here as a reversionary lease, I said the very thing. We need to study, we need to do this. And it was no, we're good to go. But see, now that the board's come back and said, well, we didn't feel good about reversionary. When Connie came out and says, you know what, the one that really is pushing reversionary is Mr. Anderson. And everybody else understands, and everybody else has been through the economics, and we've studied it very, very hard. We've hired multiple consultants. Those consultants have been swayed against the board's instruction.
No, I need to stop you there. I just want to add one thing. When the recommendation came back initially, and I'm just saying this because I was out there at the time, I want to make sure that we're not painting the picture erroneously for anyone. When the recommendation came initially from the consultant to do a reversionary lease, there was not this immediate reaction, okay, great, this is it, let's move it forward to council. What happened was no sooner had the recommendation come, did this discussion start. We never had a chance to give a formal recommendation to the board or as a council. I just want to make sure you're representing that correctly.
Okay. Yeah, let me, if it came out of my mouth or whatever, because you understood it wrong, let me clarify. The study came back from the J Aviation with recommendations.
I'm referring to your statement where you suggested that yes, we do need more time to study the issue.
No, okay, let's back up. Let's go back before J Aviation was even hired. I said, what did the board direct J Aviation? We want economic analysis to show. I challenged anybody to show me any day of the week that reversionary lease is better long-term, like Mr. Anderson just said, for the city. Financially, it's better. Because I said, nobody's done it.
Right.
Nobody's done it. Because they can't do it.
But it sounded like as soon as reversionary lease came in,
no.
We all just jumped on board and said that's science.
We had a study done. I mean, before my time, there was a study done like that. Study say whatever you want to say, if that's how they're directed. Okay. J Aviation didn't do what the board asked them to do. Plain and simple. Why they didn't, I'm not going to know. But we asked for analysis. We asked for the stuff. We just need to get it. And you know what? We've had to, as a board, we've had to say, you know what? We've gone out and, like I said before, I've gone out. I've looked at other airports. I've asked them what they're doing. I've visually looked at a good example that I brought up with Pomona. I mean, you can go from one side to the other and see rundown hangars down to the new ones, and the city will lease those for whatever somebody will pay, because they have them now, they own them now, and that's, I know these are real things. The real thing is this: at the end of the day, what Mark's comment about, we sold 8 hangars, and then we also got a lease rate number. Well, what would have been the selling price if they were non-reversionary? We sold them for what we sold them. We shipped them. We got rid of them. But if there's 100 people standing there waiting to do a non-reversionary lease, and they'll pay, that drives the price and the value up. And they'll pay it. If they can control it, they'll pay more for the ground lease underneath it. It really, decide what we want to grow up. You know, when we grow up, we I think we know what we want to go now. We made a recommendation. But what's going to drive the future is this document, you know, which way that happens. Thanks.
Mayor, if I could just have respond to that.
Okay, Mr. Anderson first, and then Mr. Bull.
So, Mr. McQuarrie, I guess, insinuated that I was the one that created the document behind the scenes. And, you know, I asked Kurt Nielsen what drove him to make the reversionary recommendation. He says, based on the airports that we surveyed, which were identified by the board and approved by the board, the majority of those airports surveyed offered reversionary leases. And that was the impetus behind his recommendation for reversionary leases. It was the analysis is what of those airports supported the reversionary clause being included in the policy. And it wasn't Mark Anderson saying this is what the results seem to be. And as we discussed this, I've always told him, you're the independent consultant. Your job is to be independent and make sure that the recommendation you're making is what you think is in the best interest of the Heber City, not based on any influence you get from the outside, including myself.